Let's now switch to a new speaker that we have here, which is Mr. Zdeněk Pecl, Executive Director of the Association of the Automotive Industry. And let's hear how the automotive, I would say the standard automotive that needs to do some evolutions and changes to be actually up to date. How the automotive industry is actually seeing the new challenges.
Thank you for the introduction, Daniel. Looking at the date, 24/11, we got just 1 month to go before Christmas, so let's get straight into the topic. First, let me say a few words about the Czech Automotive Industry Association. We represent not only the OEMs producing here in Czech Republic, but also the whole of the value chain behind them, so all the supplier companies, development companies, universities. So from that perspective, it is important to take a bigger picture at the change that is ahead of us. I'm not sure if the slides are actually changing as they should be, so I hope that you see the second slide. Why I wanted to sort of look at the bigger picture. Of course, the electromobility is not is happening already for some time, but if you look at the Green Deal, that's something that has been the real driver of this change, and now the electromobility has been really embedded into our European regulatory DNA. So we as producers look at the CO2 reduction from the factories. Of course, we look at the CO2 reduction in cars. There's a regulation for target performances. There's a regulation for infrastructure, the AFIR regulation that prescribes how much infrastructure should there be on the main roads across all of Europe. And of course, there is regulation that talks about the fleets, the public fleets of the companies, but also the of the government institutions, but also the private fleets of the companies. Speaking about the regulatory affairs, I think it's necessary not to forget the customer. I think a good if you want to sort of explain it somehow, what the electromobility will mean for the customer, it's good to look back at what the change from a classic phone to a smartphone meant for the customers. New capabilities, new abilities, and similar will happen from our perspective with swap from internal combustion engines to electric cars. So it's not only about the reducing carbon emissions. Of course, this is something that customers may not be so keen on as a selling argument. Of course, it's also about improving air quality, especially in the cities. Even noise reduction, even though we have to make cars even noisier to make them safe for the pedestrians in the cities. But of course, it's about improving the performance and driving comfort of the users. From our experience, anybody who has driven an electric car for quite some time actually didn't want to swap back for internal combustion. And in some cases, as you may have already heard in the first presentation, it's also about reduction of operating costs. And now we are trying to work on spreading this vector of good situations to be wider. But of course, it's not only about the advantages. This change, there's a lot of challenges involved. One of them being the cost of purchasing the vehicle. We have discussed the competition also from China, which is definitely one of the driving factors. Even though I'd say Tesla would be the one that is behind the major shifts in the cost these days. And it also has some implications, of course, in the pricing of the secondary market, which also involve the pricing of insurance and leasing. I think driving range and charging speed has been quite a topic for some time, but I'd say these days there are already vehicles on the market that are capable of really replacing your traditional internal combustion engines, cars like Hyundai Ioniq 6, Tesla Model 3, and others, which are in a reasonable cost range for the customers. Charging infrastructure is going to be a huge topic, and I would want to delve a little bit more into it later in the presentation. And the last one, which I sort of mentioned at the beginning, and I want to end with it, of course, is the switch of the mindset of the users, which is going to be the hardest challenge of them all. If we're talking about the switch, let's look at the production. It's important to see what is actually happening on the production side and later on in the markets. There are a lot of data in the slides. In the left upper corner, it's the data of total EU production of vehicles. So you can see that there have been 12 million vehicles produced in the EU in 2022. And already the share of the electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids in the production was almost 13% last year. So interannual increase, and the number is again increasing this year. If you look at the sales in Europe, some 9.3 million were sold last year. The percentage of them being battery electric plug-in hybrids was already 17%, which is definitely a significant share of the market, as you will see later in the slides. And of course, being the representative of Czech Automotive Association, it's important to show you also that this is happening already in the Czech Republic as well, even though, as we later hear, there are great differences between different markets across the EU. So from the 1.2 million of vehicles produced here in Czech Republic, again, almost 13% were electric or battery electric vehicles. The point being that, of course, most of this production is being exported within the EU. And just to see what I meant by the great differences across the European market is the share of electric vehicles in our registration, which was just 3.8% of total registrations within this October, which is already a good advancement for us, but of course way behind the European markets. This is a snapshot of how the market with different fuels have developed over the last few years. So you can see the graphs from 2019 up until 2022. The blue line of the graph at the bottom is petrol. The greenish one, petrol would be the right color, is actually a diesel. And you can see that diesel is really diminishing. And already in last year, a combination of battery electric and plug-in hybrids was higher than the percentage of diesel cars. And if you look at the current data for October, then the diesel represents only 12% of total shares, while electric vehicles represent over 40 or even 17% pure electric vehicles. So the change is really happening. And when you look at those graphs in that order, you can see the change is happening quite fast, actually. So not looking at only at the markets and the production, let's look at what the OEMs have to say. You all might remember that in Europe, 2035 is the end date of sales of internal combustion vehicles. So this is the date the oil manufacturers are aiming for. But when you look at the stories of different manufacturers, there are just few examples on the screen. You can see that they are all moving at different pace. Some of them are even swapping to completely electric way before 2035. So, for example, Volvo already in 2030. Some of them will be introducing 70% of their portfolio into electric even within the second decade of this decade, of course, second half of this decade. And of course, there is a huge shift that has implications into the production. So while, for example, Tesla is producing only electric vehicles and manufacturers are considering only electric vehicles production lines in their factories. The situation is complicated by the situation in the supply chain, which is still after COVID not 100% smooth. So in some cases, combined production of electric vehicles and internal combustion vehicles at one production line is actually a good solution, for example, in the Volkswagen Group. If we want to look a little bit further, oh yes, perfect, at who are the real competitors in the electrified arena. Everybody has been talking about Tesla for the last few years, and rightly so, but these days it's BYD with a large margin, who is the major global EV player. BYD, a company that we know for batteries production. Every smartphone has battery made by BYD, and most of the iPads were produced with batteries of BYD. And now they decided that they will complement their battery production with the final product, a car. And it seems that really successfully so. So if we want to look at who the main players and the main competitors are, this is what the numbers are telling us. Looking back again at the market, at the customers, I can see that there's again some small glitch with the slides. No, perfect. Of course, we have vehicles that cost millions of pounds like Rimac or hundreds of thousands of pounds like Lucid. But in order to look at electromobility in really broader perspective, we need to look at the main market. So right now we already have vehicles at the market that cost around 40 or maybe 50,000 euros, which is Skoda Enyaq, Tesla 3, Hyundai Ioniq 5. So this segment is serving the first customers, the first movers in. And it seems that these vehicles are already up to the task of replacing the internal combustion vehicles. But the bigger challenge is moving downwards. Of course, as the end date of sales of internal combustion 2035 draws near, then we of course need to replace all categories that the customers are used to. So going into mid-range, around 30,000 euros, this is something that is still difficult for traditional OEMs, but we already have Chinese MG vehicles in that kind of segment. Really important segment for Europe, and actually a really difficult one economic-wise for manufacturers is the segment around 20,000 euros. The cars for the cities and also for the extra-urban drivings that don't need such big range, but need to be small, need to be achievable. So around 20,000 euros. Again, we see the first competitors coming into the market in the next year, and we will see definitely more after the year 2025. So I think the plans are there. And the micro segment, for quite some time, there has been discussion what this mobility switch will mean for the automotive. Automotive players have experimented with the small electric scooters for the cities, with bikes hiring, with car sharing, which actually are a little bit further from the traditional hardcore automotive production. So this segment of micro cars, of cars like Citroën Ami, cars that are really meant only for the cities and perhaps even best cars for the sharing. So this is something that we are looking at, that there is a potential for the cities at around 10,000 euros per car. But let's see, the market is definitely small these days, and we don't have the right regulations for really further developing this market, for example, as the one Japan has with their K cars. We spoke about the challenges that are ahead. Of course, the charging infrastructure is the major one. We can talk about all of the Europe, but let's look at the special use case of Czech Republic. Currently, here we have some 2,000 chargers, public chargers, around 17,000 cars. So from the numbers, you would say that the mathematics is okay, that it works. But if you look at the map, it's actually a PowerPass application that you can see on your screens. Czech Republic is actually a desert within Europe. You can see the chargers within Germany, you can see chargers within Austria, but really few fast chargers on the map of the Czech Republic. So there is still a lot of work that needs to be done. This is something that the European regulation AFIR prescribes. And in order to actually achieve those targets that are prescribed by regulation for the year 2030, we would need to build 50 fast charging stations every month from now on until the year 2030. So anybody who can count, this is actually a huge task, not only economically, but also in practical terms, because it takes 2-3 years sometimes to build out the infrastructure. The time is running up. Thank you for listening, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We have a couple of questions from the audience, so I will ask the first one. Somebody from audience was questioning about the higher sales of plug-in hybrid compared to BEV, and how would you explain this?
Actually, when you look at the numbers, I think the sales of plug-in hybrids are going down. They are going down even more than we actually expected. We expected the plug-in hybrid technology to be the one that will bridge the gap between internal combustions and battery electric, that will allow people to sample it. But now we see that from the regulatory perspective, those vehicles are not really favored. And even the customers sort of already understood that they can switch to battery electric already now, because the cars have the capabilities and the infrastructure, at least the basic one, is already there, so they can function with their battery electric. So this is why, in my mind, the numbers are actually plummeting way much than we expected.
Yes, maybe the follow-up question there, where you have these 4 challenges in your presentation. What would you say this was the hardest challenge in real here in Czech Republic?
Well, we have discussed electromobility in Czech Republic for quite some time. I mentioned that the Czech Automotive Industry Association is a production association, but we feel that we need to take care of the market as well. For us, it was important to set market conditions that would make electric vehicles for users interesting, a good solution to switch to, which has, in most part, happened already. But perhaps there was even too much discussion, too much push of the electromobility, and of course, if there's too much push on anything against us humans, the natural human reaction would be to sort of hold back and go against it. So now we really need to spread the electromobility among the people, give them the chance to try it out and see for themselves that it makes sense in many use cases already today.
There is one question which may be not right for you. I mean, that's because it's not about automotive. But somebody from audience was like questioning that many of the transportation actually is proceeding in ships. So what do you think about the electrification of ships and, I mean, this kind of transport?
I must admit I have not much knowledge of electrification of ships, especially coming from Czech Republic, where transport on waters is definitely not the main way of transporting goods. In fact, if we look at the goods transport, in Czech Republic, 70 to 80% of goods are being transported on road. So even the shift to rail is not really happening, and we know that the rail has got only limited capabilities, so that there is even not a chance to really up it in foreseeable future. So in my mind, we need to focus on the road transport to decarbonize it, decarbonize the trucks. So we need to find money in the Czech Republic to start pilot projects for the companies involved in the transport, and this is how we attain the decarbonized future that we are all talking about.
Maybe one of the last question here is about the wireless charging. So what do you think about this? That there are some like attempts to create the wireless charging where you can come with the car and charge wirelessly?
I think this is ultimately the end game that we are all aiming for. Already now, you don't need to go to a petrol station. If you have a charger at home in a garage or in a company, you just drive to work or home, plug it, and that's it. So there's a relief of one of the activities that you need to do. With wireless charging, then you will basically need to charge never ever again. The vehicle will take care of it itself. So we are really looking into those options, but technology-wise, economically-wise, it's not still really a mature technology. So let's hope at least for the parking charging, we will have that technology soon. There were some discussions on charging on the highways. That's sort of perhaps really far away, if ever. Then, but the home charging, when you just park your car and the car will take care of it, everything, then this is something that will come, I hope, in a few years' time, and this is where we need to go for the customer experience.
Actually, the wireless charging is something that is already tested in Oslo. We have speakers from Oslo, so we will hear a little bit about that. I think that will be a better place to ask for details.
Okay. Oh, great. Thank you very much. We have some limited time, and so we need to move on, but thank you for a great presentation.
Thank you for having me. Have a nice day today.